Well, I would say we develop our D and S and R and P abilities throughout life.
Yes.
But perspective is unique in that when you're born, you really have, you're taking one perspective, which is your own, which has evolutionary benefit, right? Because you're literally self-centered.
Yeah.
So you're literally, focused on am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Do I want comfort? Do I want, did I poop my pants or whatever? Obviously you're not conceptualizing all that quite yet.
There's a need.
There's a need, right? And you're focused on that need and that need alone, and you cry or whatever. And so you are taking a perspective. That perspective is the one that you're in, right? Yeah. Children up to about 4 or 5 years old, they're not doing what the bowerbird's doing. They're doing the first perspective of the bowerbird, which is they have a perspective.
Yeah.
But they're not doing the second part of what the bowerbird's doing.
Meaning they can't take the perspective of another bird.
Yeah, which is sometimes called theory of mind, meaning that you can see your own way of seeing things, but you can also have a theory of somebody else's mind and see that their mind might see things differently than your mind, which is literally perspective taking.
Yeah, but young kids can't do that.
Kids up to about 4 years old, they're just taking the one perspective, their perspective. But around about 4 years old, 5 years old, they start to develop because they're starting to be a little bit more functional, a little bit more social out on the wild kind of thing. So they need to start taking perspective, right, of others.
Yeah.
And there's a great experiment called the Sally Ann experiments, which are really fantastic experiments.
That sort of proved this point.
That show this.
Theory of mind comes
exactly.
later. Yeah.
I don't know if we want to go in. Do we want to go in?
I think we should. So there's Sally and there's Ann.
So Sally and Ann are dolls. And the researcher is hanging out with a kid. And they're kind of doing like a puppet show, in a sense. Yep. And Sally has a basket.
Yep.
And Anne has a little box, right? And the basket has like a cover, and the box has a cover.
Yeah.
And Sally, in the puppet show, the kid's watching this. In the puppet show, Sally puts a marble into the basket.
Into her basket. Yes.
And then Sally leaves the room. In the puppet show.
Leaves the stage.
Yep. And then Anne takes the marble out of Sally. Anne's a little minx. She's mischievous. She takes the marble out of Anne's basket, covers it, and then puts it in her box and closes the box.
She stole
And the kid is watching this. So the kid knows the marble's in the box.
Yes.
But Sally's outside, so Sally doesn't know that the marble's in the box. Sally thinks that the marble's where she put it in the basket. Well, now in the play, and then Anne leaves.
Yeah.
Sally comes back. And the researcher asks a very simple question, which is, where is Sally going to look for the marble?
The researcher asked the kids that they
asked the kid,
where is Sally
going to look for the marble? Well, pre 4 or 5 years old, pre them taking perspective or theory of mind, the kid will say, well, Sally's going to look in the box because the kid knows that the marble's in the box.
Right. Yeah.
So the kid is not able to say, Sally's mental model of the world is different than mine.
Yes.
The kid just has their mental model. The marble's in the box. Sally will look in the box. But around about 4 or 5 years old, kids will say, wait a minute, I saw that happen, right? The marble go in the box. But Sally didn't see that. Sally was outside. So she doesn't know that shift happened.
Right.
So Sally's going to think that the marble's still in the basket. And therefore, Sally's going to look in the basket.
Right.
And that is a big shift.
Yeah.
Right? That's a big shift.
And you're saying they showed that ability to take that other perspective was not found in kids unless they were 4 or 5 years old. 4
or 5 years old, and as an additional understanding that we got. So, and this has been since done on primates and other things, but the original experiment was done with Down syndrome kids, neurotypical kids, and autistic kids.
Yep.
And what they found was the Down syndrome kids and the neurotypical kids would get it right around 4 or 5 years old. Autistic kids, less so. So that's why we know
that's part of the challenge.
Part of the challenge with autism, some forms of autism, is perspective taking, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really, but generally speaking, humans get this ability for theory of mind around 4 or 5 years old. So if you have little kids, it's really fascinating to watch them when they only have this uni perspective.
Yeah.
And then as they get to closer to the 4 or 5 mark, somewhere in that region, you're going to start seeing them take theory of mind, and things really
they all change.
get a little bit more robust and complex in that period, as we all know.